We are about to start with the recorded surgeries session, and I would invite our moderator, Dr. Pooja Khamar, to please moderate this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Diksha. Welcome everyone. We are going to have a wonderful session on recorded surgeries, and we have some brilliant lineup of speakers who have a lot of experience with whatever they're going to speak on. So without further delay, I would like to call on our first speaker, who's Dr. Saurabh Patwardhan sir. I think any words for his introduction would fall short because he has a lot of experience when it comes to cataract and both refractive surgery. He handles a lot of complicated cases, and what one point I like about his is he doesn't just treat them, he teaches other, and he spreads the knowledge on how to manage, what to do, and his videos are excellent. So I'm looking forward to his presentation, and he would be talking on magnificent EDOF lens beyond monofocal IOL. Thank you, sir. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pooja, for that very kind introduction. Can you see my shared screen?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, okay. So I will go ahead. So this is a live recorded video which I did last Saturday. And this is the magnificent IOL which I'll be implanting. The power, as it says, 24.5 diopters. So I always use the Barrett formula, which is now, I think, universally accepted formula. And as you can see, this magnificent IOL, it has the Barrett, the lens factor of 2.04. And luckily, I got the exact 24.5 here as the emmetropic power. Apart from the IOL power, we have to look at the keratometry. You can see it's 0.72 diopter at 100 and around 17 degrees. So my aim will be to take the incision on the steep axis. This magnificent IOL at present is present only in the spherical platform. So there is no toric available. So I'm sure in future it will be available. So that will be great for the patients. And this particular IOL has extended depth as compared to a normal monofocal, which may have little bit of extended depth, say around 0.5 diopter. This has around 1 to 1.4 diopter of extended depth. But in my practice, I use it like a monofocal. I call it a advanced monofocal IOL because it doesn't really give you very good near vision, but it gives you a very good functional vision. So I start off the surgery. Patient is on topical anesthesia here. And I'm going to use also the Callisto system. You can see in my video that there is this EDIS, which is attached to Lumira microscope. And I'll be using more of retroillumination, which I really like using during the surgery. And you can see the Callisto is showing me the steep axis, which is at 117 degrees in this patient. So I always sit at the head end of the patient in all my surgeries. So this is not something exclusive. And I try to take the incision always on the steep axis, because what I found out in my post-op patient is that the residual astigmatism is the big headache. Nowadays, with good biometer available and with good formula like Barrett, we are getting lesser and lesser spherical errors, but astigmatism is something which the surgeon has to control. So this is the triplanar incision. You can see the incision is at the mid-limbal level, so it bleeds little bit. And for all my premium IOLs, I use heavy dispersive OVD Hylucoat, which is combination of chondroitin and hyaluronate. And I find the results are really good with crystal clear corneas, and patient get really good vision immediately post-operatively. This is the CCC guide using the Callisto. The target is between 5.3 to 5.7 millimeter of the capsular axis, and preferably centered around the visual axis. If not, I use the limbal centered capsular axis. Using Hylucoat is another advantage. The CCC is well controlled. As you can see, I could get a good size rhexis here, followed by hydrodissection. A good hydrodissection and nucleus rotation before we start phaco surgery. Now, this particular IOL, because it has that extended depth, I use it in two different ways. One, if I want to have the patient should have excellent distance visual acuity, then what I do is that I take the power which is on the hyperopic side. And when I want the patient to have good intermediate visual acuity as well, then I may take the power which is on the myopic side. So patient may have slightly reduced distance vision, but have better intermediate vision. So according to the patient needs, we can titrate the IOL power in this particular IOL. I start off always with low IOP. You can see 40 centimeter IOP. And just to note here, it's a grade 1 cataract. I started off with CD of around 21.5. Now, these grade 1 cataracts are really sometimes a headache because they don't chop well. Trench divide is an issue sometimes. So what I do in such cases, I do mechanical chop. You can see I'm not using any vacuum and just using the 1 millimeter Sinskey and the probe to divide the nucleus into pieces so that I can then just aspirate it out from the bag. Now to aspirate it out of the bag, after the division is complete, what I do is I use the sideways bevel to take out these pieces in the center and just do phaco aspiration. You will notice that during the surgery, the phaco energy use is very minimal. It is just 3 CDE, which is very negligible. And it is going to give me a very clear cornea and very safe for the endothelium. The machine being used here is the Constellation, and in which I can also control the IOP. You can see I'm using 100 centimeters of bottle height, and this is a Venturi mode which I'm using. So which takes care of the cataract very quickly. This is a very quick machine and safe. And this is a live recorded unedited video with the same speed. So you can see how quickly I can complete the surgery with much of safety. Now this IOL particularly has 2 holes near the haptic, and many times many of my colleagues have asked me what are these haptic holes for. I really am not sure why these are for, but theoretically I feel these holes will prevent the capsular distension syndrome, which can happen with beginners when they leave little bit of viscoelastic in the bag, which should be avoided in all cases. So this is the end of the cortex aspiration. I use the coaxial IA. And for the implantation of the IOL now, and just I will show you how to load this lens. Now this design is very, very good. There is not a single IOL damage, which I have noticed with this IOL design. This is the open cartridge, or we call it butterfly cartridge. And the important thing is to place the optics as well as the haptic right inside this groove so that they don't jet out when you are closing the cartridge, and make sure the haptics are lying just besides the optic. I don't try to put the haptics over the optic. And then once you have inserted this cartridge, I make sure that while pushing the IOL, the haptic is not stuck between the silicone plunger and the wall of the cartridge. And when I'm injecting, I always inject slowly, looking at the distal or the trailing haptic as well, so that it doesn't get stuck. And you can see how nicely it goes in. Very soft material. This is a cast molded IOL. So you have very soft material, very tacky lens. And that's gone right inside the bag. And I'm going to do now visco wash. Whenever I use Hylucoat, I have to make sure that I take it out right from behind the endothelium, because it's a very sticky and very sticky and heavy dispersive material which protects the endothelium perfectly, but we have to wash it off very well at the end of the surgery. This is the trick. Go behind the IOL and take out the viscoelastic as much as possible. I am almost obsessive for removal of this viscoelastic, but what it does is that the patient have very comfortable post-operative course. Most of the patient tell me that they never felt as if the surgery was done in their eyes. It is as comfortable. That is because of the complete visco wash. Of course, hydroimplantation is another way to achieve a visco-free post-operative period. But I think for beginners, and always visco injection, the IOL injection under visco is always safer because it's more control. Now let's have a look at this IOL. I am hydrating the incision, and then we'll see the IOL surface. And you will find that the IOL surface is quite clear. There are no halos, there are no rings or anything. And there is no central bump also, which might be seen in some of the EDOF IOLs. So what we have here is a clear optic with no bumps, and there is a gradual decrease of the IL power from the center to the periphery. So which is quite good and gives no glares halos as such. Patient generally get very good distance vision and very good intermediate vision as well. So that's the end of the surgery. Just confirm that the AC is well formed, and that's it from my side. I also followed up the patient this Saturday after a week. Patient had unaided 6/6 vision with intermediate vision of around N10.
Thank you,
Okay,
Saurabh sir.
over to Pooja.
Thank you, Saurabh sir. It was a very clean surgery and always lots to learn, like simple tips for at least the beginners from how you do operate. Just one quick question before we move on to the next talk, sir. How do you counsel your patients for when you're using this magnificent IOL? And what do you tell them? Like, how do you give them the expectations what to have after surgery?
Right. So I was lucky to use this IOL even before the launch. So I used around 30-40 IOLs as a part of the trial process. And what I found out is that I'm not going to, promise the intermediate vision to any of the patients. So what I do is that I give it as an advanced monofocal, which gives you better range of vision than the standard monofocal. So the expectations are lowered, but most of these patients are quite happy because many of them may not, use any glasses for, say, checking mobile or, doing regular activities like cooking, even for simple things, like, taking lunch. Many of monofocal patients, they have to wear the presbyopic glasses to look what is there in their plate. So many of these things are taken care of. So patients are usually quite happy with this IOL. So I think under promise and over deliver, that is the best way to approach.
I think that's the best tip, sir. And how about computer users, ones who use desktop, not this thing, but desktop? Is it beneficial for them or?
Yeah, what I found that the approximate the addition which this patient get is around +1 diopter, not more than that. And nowadays, because many people use laptop rather than desktop, so the distance is say 60 to 80 centimeters, which is not actually 1 meter. So though many of them are comfortable, particularly those who have got, slightly on the ended up with myopic side, they are comfortable. But otherwise, I would just advise them glasses, because I tell them that it's okay to use glasses if it is comfortable for you, because this is a monofocal IOL, which just that you may not use it for many other things to do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So looking at the time, we will have to move on to the next talk.
Thank
you.
I
would now like to, Dr. Pankaj is here. Dr. Pankaj Lande.
Yes, I have joined, madam.
Okay, so I would like to invite next Dr. Pankaj, who is the head of Sri Netralaya Amravati, and he would be talking about the triphobic IOL. So sir, over to you, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Today I'll be presenting a recorded video. I'll start sharing my screen now.
Yes, sir.
This is as I was already in a search of a trifocal lens, which was working good for me. I have found the IOCare triphobic platform. Trifocal IOL is one of the best. I have evaluated this lens with a few parameters, and I have found that this is very useful. I'm just showing a pre-recorded surgery. Just go through this. Hello friends, welcome to Sri Netralaya. With the multifocal, trifocal, and a newer concept of EDOF IOLs in the present days. Now, how you will identify which IOL is working best for your patient and is giving a good vision for all distances. So in this video, I am evaluating IOL performance on basis of few parameters which you can evaluate in your clinic. The first one is a defocus curve. followed by MTF, that is modular transfer function, followed by contrast sensitivity, point spread function, glare and halos, pupil dependency of IOL, and the IOL tolerance for tilt and decentration. So let's see a defocus curve. Defocus curve is an objective clinical measure of how well a IOL is correcting presbyopia. Once the eye is quiet post-surgery, eye is corrected for residual refractive errors and is subjected to lenses from +1 to -4 diopter with 0.5 increment, and vision is noted for distance, intermediate and near ideally. And a graphical plot of this vision against the power is someone is seeing through a -1 lens that will be equivalent to a patient vision at 1 meter distance. Coming to the second point of MTF, that is modular transfer function. In simple language, MTF is optical system's ability to reproduce the image of an object. MTF is a mechanism to define resolution and contrast data into a single specification. So MTF for clean air is 1, that is maximum, and it can be derived from a point spread function and a line spread function. So clinically, MTF is important as low MTF value IOLs may have decreased contrast sensitivity. Coming to the third parameter, that is contrast sensitivity, it can be defined simply by averaging the differences of maximum and minimum intensities. It can be tested using Paley-Robson's contrast sensitivity chart. PSF is blurring of an imaginary point as it passes through an optical system. The MTF is a representation of PSF in Fourier space. Next important parameter is pupil dependency of convex and photopic pupil size. Practically, larger pupils tolerate myopic defocus, while smaller pupils see better at distance when emmetropia is achieved. All multifocal and trifocal IOLs are sensitive to decentration and tilt. Next important parameter is glare and halos, which is part and parcel of multifocal and trifocal IOL designs. Though a triphobic IOL has less amount of glare and halos. Now let's know how the triphobic IOL is designed. The concept of apodization means gradual transition of optical properties from center of the lens to the edge. Now, to apodize the surface, you have to reduce the height of each steps, and this causes progressive shift of light energy split towards far foci when the pupil dilates. Now consider we have two apodized diffractive elements, one for far and near, the other for far and intermediate. We will adjust the height of diffractive steps to split energy optimally between the near, far and intermediate foci. This is how a combined diffractive pattern will appear, which will have a near add of +3.5 and +1.75 combined. And you can notice that each step height is decreased towards the apodized surface. This is a diffractive optic design of a trifocal IOL. when we do the energy scan for triphobic IOL, the light distribution is 50% for far, 30% for near, and 20% for intermediate. Total loss of light during dynamic energy transfer is less than 10%. The defocus curve is very promising. As you can see, there is not much of a dip in the center of the curve. The MTF values are also very good. It is 0.6 for far and 0.5 for near. The IOL will come with the actual power and the power map for distribution of power for distance and near. These parameters will help you to decide the precise power for your patient. The optic designs of IOL shown on a magnified view. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dr. Pankaj Lande, for more such exciting videos. Thank you for your patient listening. After using this IOL, I have found these IOLs are quite promising and quite happy patients we are having here. So I'm using these IOLs regularly, and now I have found this IOL as much more beneficial, taking into consideration maybe much more like bigger company IOLs also. The most important part is intermediate vision, which is extremely good, and the working distance patients are very comfortable even for driving and intermediate vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a wonderful video. And Namrata ma'am is here. Namrata ma'am, would you like to say anything?
No, I was just checking. That's all. Please carry on.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing it.
Okay. So, Dr. Saurabh, you would like to add anything in this, sir?
Yeah, I think this is a excellent platform, and many times from patient point of view, it's very difficult to afford imported IOLs, and still they want a good quality vision. I think this particular lens, I think Pankaj will agree, even Bhagyashree will agree with me, is at par with any of the multinational IOL, and will be a choice of IOL for many patients who want to get rid of their glasses. And I've used them not only in cataract patient, but also for clear lens extraction, because clear lens extraction patient, they already have good vision with glasses, but still they don't want to use glasses, particularly the elderly patients. And I use this particular IOL for those patients also, and that shows the confidence in the surgeon about this particular IOL.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So basically, it's a spectacle-free life for everyone. We have one more talk from Dr. Bhagyashree Deshmukh. She's also from Deshmukh Eye Hospital, Amravati, and she's going to be talking about triphobic IOLs from her point of view. So we would like to hear her perspective, and then maybe if we have any questions, we can take it. Over to you, Dr. Bhagyashree.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Hello, everyone. So basically, I've been asked to present a video on trifocal IOL and share my experience with triphobic SD. Dr. Pankaj has already nicely covered the assessment part of the lens, and I'll mainly be speaking about the basics of trifocal optics and later the surgical pearls to implant the IOL. So I'll just share my screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about a little bit of physics first. So diffractive optics is based on the wave nature of light. Waves are generally have the ability to interfere with each other. So basically in diffractive IOLs, there is an aspheric lens and a structure with zigzag sharp edges placed on the lens, which is called kinoform. And this kinoform intentionally induces the diffraction so that the waves exiting from the lens will form constructive and destructive interference. Constructive interference gives two foci, one for distance and one for near. and destructive will give rise to loss of contrast. So how much light energy will go for distance and how will it go for near is mainly governed by the height of the steps. Some percent of light will not be diffracted at all. That is called zero order diffraction, and it is mainly for distance. Some light will be diffracted into first order diffraction, which is for near, and remaining, as shown here, the 20% light is diffracted into higher order, which causes halos. And coming to second part, the width. The width of the steps determines the addition power. Smaller the width, more the addition of power, and larger the width, lesser the addition power. In trifocal lenses, there is basically combination of two diffractive structures, one for near and other for intermediate. In triphobic HD, there is a combination of plus 3.5 and plus 1.8. So decreasing step height and increasing the angulation from center to periphery ensures good light distribution in both mesopic and photopic pupil, which is commonly called as apodization. So coming to our case, this is a 60-year-old female with nuclear sclerosis grade 2. Her pre-op vision was 6/18, and her pre-op evaluation showed good corneas, like on her topography, higher order aberrations, spherical aberrations were all within normal limits. Her angle kappa and alpha were within 0.5 mm. And it is very important to get 5 to 5.5 millimeter of rhexis well centered on the visual axis, as just mentioned by Dr. Patwardhan. The patient is basically asked to look at the microscope light, and the first Purkinje image, which is from cornea, is taken as the center of rhexis. I always perform multiple hydrodelineation in soft cataract to assess the nucleus grade and size. The nucleus is chopped using very little vacuum and energy. Since it is a soft cataract, chopping is little tricky here. Then the heminuclei are phacoaspirated one after the another. So triphobic HD is basically hydrophobic acrylic trifocal lens. It has fewer rings, so that makes it less prone for glare and halos. It has biconvex optics with modified C-loops haptic. So after finishing the bimanual irrigation and aspiration, I always implant lens under continuous irrigation. That makes visco wash very easy. And the last and most important part of the surgery is centration of the lens. The center of the optics has to be coincided with the first and third Purkinje images. The first image is from the anterior surface of cornea, and third is from the anterior surface of lens. It's a good idea to wash the visco from behind the lens if you are using dispersive viscoelastics while loading. And many times visual axis is a bit nasal to center of pupil. So slight nudging the lens nasally or a bit rotation of the lens does the trick of centration. And post-operatively, patient had 6/6 uncorrected vision for distance. For near, at around 35 centimeters, she was N6. At around 70 centimeters for intermediate, she had N8 vision. And if we look at the defocus curve on the right side of triphobic HD, it shows 3 humps for distant, intermediate, and near. The dip which we get on bifocal lens for intermediate range is definitely gone here. And to conclude that, I would say that triphobic HD gives excellent distance and near vision if your biometry and surgical technique is perfect. And it gives improved intermediate vision compared to bifocals. Glare and halos are there, but still they are less bothersome than the traditional bifocal lenses. And there is definitely a happy patient post-operatively if you have selected the right patient for the surgery. Thank you. I think that's the end. The video was playing again. I'll just stop it.
Thank you, Dr. Bhagyashree, for that wonderful presentation. So what Dr. Saurabh said that, not all patients can afford our international lenses, but this is one of the, I think, Make in India lens, which is giving us equally good results, and the patient satisfaction according to you, it's equally well. So that is what, like, one of the key feature of this lenses is that we do not need to rely on all the known or FDA approved lenses. We can actually go ahead and put a triphobic lens, which is there here. And this is also one kind of an extended depth of focus, or a modified kind of a multifocal lens. So if I like a symphony. So so do you think that these patients will require any amount of small power for near vision or intermediate vision? Because sometimes when you use these lenses, you have, your patients do require. So according to Dr. Pankaj and Dr. Bhagyashree, do these patients require any small amount of glasses?
Actually, if your cylinder is within normal range and your aberrations are okay pre-op, there are many patients who get away without glasses. But if they want very particularly near vision and very minute work, sometimes they might need for very minute work like sewing and all. But otherwise, day-to-day routine activity, I think they can do without glasses, most of them.
Dr. Pankaj?
Most of them not required. In my experience, after implantation, after bilateral implantation, most of the patient do not require any addition. Till date, it has not happened to me. But I do give glasses sometimes with anti-glare features, so can have a slightly better quality of vision, specifically while driving or otherwise in a light conditions where they feel comfortable with the glasses.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely. I think Dr. Bhagyashree said correctly. Astigmatism is something which we have to look for. Most of these patients do not require glasses for near, but they require glasses for distance because of the residual astigmatism. So I think any surgeon who is looking forward to implanting these IOLs should consider pre-existing astigmatism and take care of that. So I think that's the take home. And I think, Pankaj, I would like to ask you, also
Yes.
Bhagyashree, what is your experience regarding the formation of PCO in this particular IOL?
I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy, not as that of a hydrophilic platform which the TriDiff, the company is having. A triphobic, the rate of PCO is slightly less. But definitely few cases I have to do this thing. I have a small query. What is the maximum limit of astigmatism? If you are planning for these kind of trifocal IOL, you usually take like 0.75 or 1 or 1.25. What?
Yeah, Bhagyashree, unmute. Okay.
Bhagyashree, madam, you are not.
Yeah, I think if it's the with the rule astigmatism, you can, your limit could be higher, like till 1 diopter of astigmatism. But if it is against the rule astigmatism, you have to have a very less threshold to correct it.
Yeah, I think the post-op residual astigmatism should be less than 0.75. At the most, 0.75 is acceptable. 0.5 or less is excellent. These patients are the most happy patients.
And regarding the PCO part, I don't think it's always the lenses. It's the surgical part as well. If your rexis is not covering properly, if you have not polished it well, then even if your lens is good, it can give rise to early PCO. But yes, in India, at least in the previous bifocal lenses, that is IDIF and all, the PCO rate was definitely higher. But in triphobic compared to IDIF, it has gone down.
In all my multifocals, I am doing PC polishing, which is already shown in the video. And the PC polisher from Epsilon are really good. No financial interest in the products, but definitely everybody can try it, and that works out very well for me. If at all, okay, Saurabh, you can try. I think
Yes,
Kanyam sir
sure.
also is there. So
yeah. So I think also another factor is that with these trifocals, we are very quick to treat PCO. So, and we look, even if patient complains of slight haziness, we look at the posterior capsule and we remove, and definitely patient vision improves. But what my experience is that this is definitely a much better platform than the hydrophilic, and almost it is comparable with any other hydrophobic multifocal that I have used across. So quite good. I mean, we don't get early PCO unlike a hydrophilic trifocal IOL.
Thank you for wonderful tips from Dr. Bhagyashree, Dr. Pankaj, and discussion by Dr. Saurabh. Now we'll have to move forward to our next talk because of the time. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Anjum Mazari. He is the refractive head at Indira Gandhi Eye Hospital, Lucknow, and he would be talking to us about the IPCL and recorded surgery. So over to you, sir, please.
Herman. Yes, I'm here. Just give me a minute.
Welcome, Anjum sir. It is nice seeing you after a long time, Anjum sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Myself and Anjum sir were there in Agarwal Hospital, Chennai. He was my senior and a very hard-working person. Sir has a very good experience and very skillful hands. It is nice to listen to you, sir.
So today we will discuss about 3-4 slides about how we work up our cases, and have no financial interest involved in this presentation. So we start the video. Hope you are able to hear my voice. So we do the detailed anterior posterior segment examination, and
Yes,
plus we do the 4 measurements. The measurements are very important. If you do the measurement correctly, you will solve the 80% of intraoperative and postoperative problems. So this is our new nomogram based on, because of IPCL2 is some different variant from IPCL1. So previous our nomogram was different, but now we change our nomogram, and see this gives about 400 to 600 micron of vaulting. Now we'll discuss certain special situation, challenging situation we found this case. So the beauty of this IPCL is highest degree of customization possible. I remember 7 years back, a patient came to me with pure cylinder, post-intact and C3R, and this is the first case of its kind. And we requested Sanjay Agarwal to make a lens with a base, and we implanted the lens in this case. There is no spherical power in this case, only cylindrical of -3.5. And that is very good news for us. After 7 years of post-op, the patient is still maintaining the 6/9 of vision. Case number 2, after doing so much, we developed now the single port technique. We don't make any side port now, and we perform all the steps on the one port only, that is the main port, and doing the double step visco wash. Just from the one port, we finish everything, and it takes about 4 to 5 minutes to perform a surgery. And you people can also try. If your trying is good, don't please try. After placing the leading and trailing haptic, we are doing 2 steps visco wash. The first step with coaxial cannula, then by Simcoe. I used Indo-German round tip Simcoe. And we do thorough wash of visco from under surface of the lens also. Just please watch this step. Because sometimes visco deposits remains, that is troublesome for surgeon also, And some, if goes to some doctor, he will tell ki cataract developed. That is not actually cataract, that is a visco deposit. But if you wash the visco properly, you can certainly avoid this kind of situation. Our third case is implantation in very small people. This patient has having very less than 5.5 mm of pupil, and during surgery further constricted by the chest instrument, we somehow managed, and in this case also completed around 6 years of post-op and maintaining 6 partial vision. Very small people, further constricted during implantation. So we have done the thorough wash in this case also, going behind the IPCL. This lens is so flexible. That's why, like, I used to do star when I was in Chennai. When I shifted here, they came to me, please accept our lens. We started doing. I'm so happy now. My 90% of cases only IPC. Very flexible lens, and after implantation, it's become stable also. The vaulting is maintained for years and years. I'm going behind the lens and watching the visco in this case also from both sides. This is a mind game. When you maintain the instrument direction horizontally, cataract will never happen. So that is facsicoil exchange. This is the case. Facsicoil was exchanged because of inappropriate size. And we have done the same sitting exchange, explanting and implantation of new size IPCL. And we have done this from the 2.8 mm port only. We have not increased the size of port also. Just rotating the wrist right clockwise, you can avoid the touching the endothelium and everything. We implanted the next size IPCL. It took around 10 to 11 minutes to perform this surgery, and vision was good post-op. Vision was good previously also. Now the haptic fold. This small maneuver in the future will prevent the haptic fold in any case. Just do one thing after finishing your surgery. See, this is a very small step, just like this. Just prevent the haptic fold, this step. Inverse unfolding is the most troublesome complication. It occurs many times in fresher, even the experienced hands. But you have to do certain things. The most important step is don't inject the IPCL or any facsicoil in rush. After injecting 2/3, see the position that the distal haptic should be horizontal before pushing the final push, giving the final push, I mean. Just see, this is becoming horizontal, wait, and this push. Again, the second complication occurred, then the stuck up near the neck. Then again, don't get panic, just touch the visco and slightly push to the forceps, make it inside, and then complete your step. In this kind of situation, most of the time, your panic causes more and more complications further. So you can avoid that complication. You all are experienced surgeons doing better than me, but I'm just giving my input, what I felt. And just rotate your wrist, make the left hole or right hole in case of ICL or IPCL in the proper, then give the final push. Don't suddenly push the lens inside the eye. Now again, it happened. Again, it is pushed by the forceps. And see the unfolding of lens, it will come okay. Now, fascicle post-RK, this is important because otherwise it's just like a normal surgery. But in the post-RK patient, the radial cut, the previous radial cut sometimes breaks away and it gives a lot of problems. So it's better to give a sclerocorneal incision in this kind of case. Video is not good of this, but just thank you.
Thank you, sir. Those were wonderful series of cases. So I think we can have the next video first, recorded video by Dr. Deshmukh, and then I think we can move forward because those are the, sorry, Dr. Parmar, and then we can move forward because those are two similar topics, and IPCL I know has a vast area of use. Like you can use it not just for your myopic or hyperopic patients, but because of the range of correction and the sizes they give us, the options, we have a wide area of use. So we can discuss this after Dr. Gautam Parmar's talk, and I would like to invite Dr. Gautam Parmar to give his show his recorded video.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving me the opportunity. I'm just sharing my video. So here is my video. Is it visible to all? My video is visible to all?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Sir. So as you can see here, this is a case of I'm presenting here. I'm implanting here a toric IPCL. You could see the marks which I placed on the slit lamp. I never use ink. Instead I just scratch in 0-180 degree with help of needle, so they may remain for longer time. Here I am making 2 side ports, as you can see in this video. Am I audible to all?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So now what I do differently, that I am not using viscoelastic here. I am not putting visco in very initial stage here. So as you can see, because putting visco for a longer time will make it more sticky to the surface and less likely to be evacuated while irrigation and aspiration. So I avoid using visco here. Here I put some visco as well as fluid. Then I am loading my IOL here. As you can see, the vault is up, and you should keep the holes at the optic edges superiorly. So you should face it towards yourself. If you are implanting it in the right eye, suppose like here I am implanting it in the right eye, so I put these holes towards me. And you can place like this and check for mobility of the IOL like this. Okay, and then you lock. So before lock, you should check the mobility. After locking, you should check again. And now I am removing these airs because they may obstruct your view while implanting. So now lens is well movable too. It is there. So now I am putting very small amount of the visco here, and wash out these blood trickled from the wound. So sometimes this blood clot may enter along with your injector. So remove the residual air and then implant. And again, you should look for the proper orientation. As you can see here, these are the projections which will guide you, as well as these holes on the optic edge will also guide you that your lens is placed in correct orientation. So as you can see, these holes should be superiorly placed. Now, and these projection marks will guide you that your lens is in correct orientation. Now, I'm tucking the haptics behind the iris. It is slightly difficult because the haptics are almost hollow. They bear big holes because this lens act as a buffer for some changes in the, some differences in the wide to wide diameter. So that's why the haptics are almost hollow, and which is, and the lens injury is also likely to happen because of them. So here you can see the excess mark is there. Now I am hydrating the most of the visco by irrigating, just irrigating it. So irrigating well as pushing the eye. Now I try to hydrostitch all the wound. This will make more secure AC formation during irrigation and aspiration. So I usually hydrate main port before using irrigation and aspiration. It avoids prolapse of the iris while irrigation aspiration also. Now I am irrigating and aspirating all the viscoelastics. You can put your aspiration port near the central hole so that it aspirating. As you can see here, this air bubble is moving, whole viscoelastic is moving. You can see clearly, it is visible here. So continuous irrigation and aspiration, it is very necessary, because it is usually seen that some residual viscoelastic may be left behind the IOL. So another thing I do differently, that I always go behind the lens. Many people, most of the people do not perform this, but I am very comfortable with this maneuver. I go behind the lens by keeping the support of the aspiration cannula from the front. So that lens does not hit the cornea. So I actually sandwich the lens between the irrigation and aspiration cannulas. So this will give me ultimate visco cleaning, and I am very comfortable. This maneuver works well with my hands. I always perform on both sides. Like you can see here also, I change my hand. Now I'm grasp my irrigation port in my left hand and going beneath the lens again. Okay, so you can see here, this is very safe with my hand. I have no problem with this, and this will give me ultimate cleanup of the viscoelastic, because we are using HPMC here, the dispersive viscoelastic, so it should be washed thoroughly. Now I'm irrigating ports while my irrigation port inside. So this will give me a stable anterior chamber. So, and you can check the final alignment of the axis along with your marks. Okay, so this is absolutely fine. All marks are in a single line. Okay, so I hydrate and then check. I also use intracameral MOXIE also at the end. So this is the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Dr. Gautam. That was a wonderful video. So as mentioned before, IPCL has a lot of scope when it comes to refractive surgery, not just correcting your myopia, hyperopia, or presbyopia, because of the range of size and the amount of astigmatism and spherical correction it gives. It helps a lot. So I would like to ask Dr. Anjum. He showed first of the video, which was on Intacs. So in keratoconic eyes, sir, what is the experience for you when you have to do an IPCL?
See, in the keratoconic eye, we usually perform first of all the cross-linking, and we wait about 3 to 6 months for stabilization of corneal power. Then we can, sometimes we have to wait for 9 months also. 1 year, up to 1 year we waited for few cases and then implanted. And still explaining the patient, sometimes it can go beyond, and then the patient should be prepared for any refractive change occur in the future.
But what is the widest range, sir, you've gone with the keratoconic eyes? The astigmatism?
Astigmatism is up to -4.
You've gone
May I intervene a bit?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I have implanted 3 cases of keratoconus with IPCL, and recently one case, the IOL power which was used, cylindrical power was 11.50. Believe me, the patient never had a vision more than 624, and now the patient is unaided 69. In addition, the quality of vision was also very good as I checked the contrast sensitivity. So I think IPCL is one condition, one tool for keratoconus patient to give a very good vision. Additionally, 2 of my cases in post keratoplasty, I have some residual refractions, and 2 of my cases I have done nearly 3 years back, and still those patients are doing great. I have posted those videos on my channel, but this is another indication which everybody should explore more. I can understand the endothelial cell damage can be a bit more, but if I can give somebody some 15 to 20 years good vision, that will be great, because I have done it for 22-year-old female, and she is doing great in her college and has no difficulty because of the IPCL, even with the keratoplasty. The 3 years follow-up, she is working great.
Now, one thing I have been talking about, the pure toric IPCL have gone up to 4, and in the combined spherical and toric have gone up to 8 also.
Okay.
Saurabh, sir,
Saurabh,
would
sir,
you-
do you have?
Yeah, I think only one thing for beginners, I would like to tell you one thing. In keratoconus eyes, always inform the technical person of the company before ordering this IPCL, because in keratoconus, cone is sometimes, bigger. So ACD unnaturally bigger, but compared to that, the angles may be shallower. So as compared to in a normal eye. So sometimes if you go by the ACD of keratoconus eye, you may vault more and patient may land up with a very shallow angles. So just mention to the technical person, and I think Mr. Sanjay and everyone, they will ask for other data, so they don't have any mishap in the post-operative period.
That's why we avoid any kind of IPCL if the corneal thick is less than 450, because you don't know exactly what will happen in future. So if above it is 450, above is there, and patient has a slightly stable refraction after C3R or otherwise, then you can do. Otherwise, you have to explain patient to wait.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. And what Dr. Saurabh sir added was a wonderful tip. So I think we are short of time, and the hall coordinators have been messaging me. So it was a wonderful session. It just shows that how much power our Make in India lenses have for us, how much wide variety they give us when it comes to patient care. It's not just for our comfort, but patients also get a very good quality of vision and life after surgery. So I think we should all rely on this Atmanirbhar Make in India lenses. And I would like to thank all my speakers, Dr. Saurabh, Dr. Anjum, Dr. Pankaj, Dr. Bhagyashri, Dr. Gautam for being here. And I would like to thank AIS and Care Group team also for putting up this session together to show the audience and AIS members that what all we can do with these lenses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one point, Pooja. I don't call these Indian lenses. I call them exported lenses, because they are exported all over the world.
Because now Care Group is now exporting in around more than 40 countries.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Mazri. I think it was an amazing collection of videos, a treat to watch all those tips. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Fantastic presentations and amazing videos, and beautifully moderated by Dr. Pooja. So with this, we conclude this session. Let's have a huge round of applause for all of us for the session. Amazing. Great. So thank you so much, speakers, for the well-organized